With us now in studio is Benjamin Anthony. He's the director of the New State Solution Group, also the founder of Our Soldiers Speak, also our senior international affairs correspondent, Owen Alterman. Thank you both for being here. Benjamin, I want to ask your thoughts on the damage that this whole episode does, in your mind, to the U.S.-Israel partnership. Clearly, it did some damage. Is it long-term, short-term? Is it going to fade or only grow stronger?
Well, I think that the split is reflective of a schism that's emerging among the Democratic Party with the support for the State of Israel. I think that is going to continue. I'm not of the opinion that the U.S.-Israel relationship is currently a bipartisan issue as once it was. The statements from Tlaib and Ilhan Omar are reflective of that fact, and I actually predict that it will grow. We're seeing utterances to a similar effect among a number of the candidates, for example, for the Democratic nominee, and this should not surprise anybody.
We hear Nancy Pelosi, the House Speaker, the most powerful lawmaker in Congress. She's saying this was a bad decision by Israel's government. It showed weakness, but the partnership is stronger than that. But as you mentioned, every candidate now on the campaign trail, everyone's being asked to weigh in. President Trump is constantly tweeting about this. Do you think it could damage the partnership in the future?
I think it could damage the partnership in the future if people insist on dealing in what I call wishful thinking. If people wish the relationship between the State of Israel and the Democratic Party to be as once it was, then they will fail to counter the move towards a more detrimental attitude towards the State of Israel from the left side of the aisle specifically. And Nancy Pelosi, incidentally, would have done very well, in my view, to put forth a far more robust resolution the first time that she had to deal with anti-Israel comments, particularly coming from Ilhan Omar.
Yeah, the anti-Semitism resolution really watered down to...
completely mealy-mouthed and toothless.
Owen, I want to ask about something that Dan Raviv mentioned in his report, these reports that the House Democrats are considering some kind of vote of censure or a resolution that I guess wouldn't be binding, but would just express a loss of faith in the Israeli ambassador to America and David Friedman, the ambassador to Israel. Talk to me about, I guess, the impact this resolution maybe could have if it moves forward.
Jeff, Israel's used to winning votes in Congress and winning votes by huge margins. To actually lose a vote like this, particularly one specifically targeted at Israel's ambassador to the U.S. And by the way, I'm not sure why poor Ron Dermer is being targeted by this resolution. By all accounts, he was one of the key people who supported having them come. Of course, then Israel boxed into a corner, on the one hand by Donald Trump, on the other hand by Tlaib and Omar, and having, at the end of the day, to choose between two bad options and decide to keep them out. Look, it doesn't have a huge short-term impact, but again, as Benjamin said, as Dan said, as we've all been saying, this is one episode in a longer-term trend that should be very, very worrying for Israel. I also think it's a huge mistake strategically for Israel to give up on the Democratic Party. There is a lot of support for Israel in large parts of the Democratic Party, not to mention the fact that the American Jewish community, by an overwhelming margin, Jeff, as you well know, is still in the Democratic Party. And again, I think that the importance of the bipartisan nature of the relationship between Israel and the United States is such that it would be a huge mistake for Israel to give up on the Democratic Party. There are obviously trends, as Benjamin said, and there are obviously increasing voices on the hard left that are very critical. None as prominent, by the way, as Tlaib and Omar have been, and as effective spokeswomen that they are for their cause. But that doesn't mean that Israel should be giving up the Democratic Party.
And let's listen to a little bit more of those words from that press conference, again, carried in every cable network, every news network across the country yesterday. Here's some more of what Ilhan Omar had to say.
We give Israel more than $3 million in aid every year. This is predicated on their being an important ally in the region and the only democracy in the Middle East. But denying visit to duly elected members of Congress is not consistent with being an ally, and denying millions of people freedom of movement or expression or self-determination is not consistent with being a democracy.
Benjamin, many analysts have said that Netanyahu, as Owen mentioned, this was a very tough call. It may have been the right decision because of their anti-Israel activism, but may not politically been the smart decision because of the headlines it's generated for a week now. What would you do? Would you invite other lawmakers to come to the West Bank? Would you do anything at all? I mean, what would you kind of do to help stem this scandal?
No, absolutely. Just before I move on to that, I want to make it absolutely clear. I don't endorse the idea of giving up hope on the Democratic Party. I do something else. I say see the warning signs that are coming from the Democratic Party and act accordingly. If you are a member of that party, have it move towards the issue that is dear to your heart, such as the US-Israel relationship. Yeah. Apathy on that issue will not be helpful. In terms of Prime Minister Netanyahu, I'm always amused by those who say that somebody did something right but unwise. Prime Minister Netanyahu is extremely aware, as is Ambassador Dermer, of the importance of the US-Israel relationship. They require no schooling on the importance of that relationship, and I think that the decision was absolutely correct and right. Now, a censure against the ambassador will not be nearly as harmful, in my judgment, as would be the headlines that would emanate from this trip by these two legislators had they been allowed to come.
All right, we'll continue this discussion after a short break. Both of you, thank you so much.